it's Chari here today, and I am going to be making this fun screen time reveal wheel card in today's video. So I am starting out with stamping out my images. I'm going to use the two little kids from the screen time set. I'm also going to use their little phones because we're going to make it look like they're texting each other, and that's going to be the reveal wheel part of our card. So I'm just going to speed up my stamping a little bit here, just because our video is kind of long, and I just want to get everything in. So I'm going to be stamping these out in jet black ink because I'm going to be doing Copic coloring. So Lawn Fawn jet black ink is a Copic friendly ink. It's also watercolor friendly, so you could color these any way you want. And I'm going to stamp out two of the little cell phones, and we'll cut those out and put them in their hands later. You could also stamp these right in their hands and not worry about die cutting them. Now I'm using the Bicycle Built for You set, and I'm using the little dog and the little cat that goes in this set because I think they're sized perfectly to go beside my little boy and my little girl. I also stamped out the bread, cheese, and wine that come in that set, and they're meant to go in the basket of the bicycle. So I'm just taking some Post-it note tape here. You can see I've already used this once. I've got some black ink on it. And I'm masking off my stamp where I don't want my ink to go. So I just want to ink up the basket part of the bicycle. So when I do that, then I can ink it up and not worry about the ink getting on the rest of the stamp. And then when I'm ready to stamp, I'll just pull off those pieces of Post-it note tape and stamp it down, and then all that stamps is the basket. And I didn't get quite the perfect impression right along the side where the tape was, so I just filled it in a little bit with a black pen. And then the last stamp I'm going to use is the tree. And this tree is from the Let's Play stamp set. So I've used 3 stamp sets here for all the pieces to create the scene that I'm going to create. Now I'm just going to do some pretty easy Copic coloring. I'm using a couple yellows to give him some blonde hair. I'm just going back in with the lighter colors, and then I'm going to color her hair brown. I'm just going in with my lightest color for a solid covering of color, and then I'll go in with some darker colors. And I try to make it look sort of like curly hair. I did some little swooshes in there, but when I went back in with the lighter, they kind of blended out a little. So I don't know how curly it really ended up looking. Also going to color the little dog. I'm just going in with some darker color around the edges and then pulling that into the center with a lighter color. And then I'm going to do my little cat, and I'm doing the lightest color first. I'm going to add some shading. And then I'm going to go in with an even darker orange color here and just do some little tiny stripes. And I always seem to color the pants on these little kids in blue because I guess they're always wearing blue jeans in my mind. I decided to make her skin tone a little bit darker since she has some darker hair. And then now I'm moving on to my tree. And actually this YG03 that I was using for the base is actually very dry, which I didn't realize. But I used that for the base coat, went in with some darker. And when I went back to try and blend it out, that's when I realized just how dry my marker was. So I'm going back in with an even lighter color to blend out that darker bit. And I'll just do some simple coloring on the trunk. You're not going to see any shadows too terribly much here. I also used the same oranges that I used on the cat for the little boy's shirt, just to have a little bit of more consistency with my colors here. So now that I've got everything colored, I can use all the coordinating dies to line it up and cut them out. And I am even going to use that bicycle die you see there with the bicycle basket, and then once it's cut with the die, I'll just cut the rest out with my scissors, and you'll see that here in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and just line up the basket part and use that to cut that outside edge at least. Alright, now I have got all my pieces die cut here, and I will go back in and die cut that second little cell phone. But to do the basket, I'm just going to grab my scissors and I'm just going to cut around the other side of the basket and leave a white border just like it was cut with the die. Now if you didn't use the dies, you could also just fussy cut all these out and not worry about the white border at all. So now to work on the reveal wheel part of my card. So this is the reveal wheel die set. I'm going to be using the main part, the two little wheels, and then the original cutout that comes with this die set. And I've already got a piece of tape on the back of my die. It's still pretty sticky, and this is actually the same piece of tape I've been using since I first got this die. So it's just going to hold that little puzzle piece in place. So I've got the Watercolor Wishes paper pad here, and I'm going to be using the blue color in this paper collection for the background of my little scene. So this is going to be my sky. I really like using this paper because I feel like it looks like it has clouds without them being specifically clouds. So I think it has a really cool look and doesn't distract from the other things that you put on it. So I've got that cut out, and that's going to be kind of my base panel for everything. Now I can take that little puzzle piece out because I'm not going to need it anymore, not for the rest of the panels that I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to use the same die to cut just a piece that goes along the bottom. I'm going to make two little grassy hills in two shades of green. So I'm going to start with the Knock on Wood collection, and I'm going to use one of these greens. They're both the same color, but they have different patterns. And then I'm going to use this lighter green from the Really Rainbow paper pad. So that'll give some contrast between my two grassy hills. I'm only going to cut the bottom of the square, and I cut it from some scrap paper. That's why this light green one already has kind of a swoop on it, because it was a scrap left over from something else. And then I've got the two grassy hillsides here. So I am just going to line this up with my back panel and kind of figure out how high I need this grassy hill. This dark one is going to be in the background. So I want it to look like whatever's in my little bubble up there, the little boy is texting, kind of like his speech bubble. So I want to make sure I get the hill high enough to where he is close enough to that opening. So that's kind of why I'm lining it up that way. And then I figured I might as well go ahead and line up the one in front while I've got my die on there and can kind of see where that hillside falls. So I'm just going to line both those up, hold them down with some washi tape, and run them through my die cut machine. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere down the darker green panel to the bottom of my sky here. I'm not going to adhere down the lighter one just yet because I'm going to end up popping that up with some foam adhesive, some very thin foam adhesive, just for a little more dimension when I start building my scene. So now I'm going to cut out the wheel part of this card. And you need these two pieces. You need this scallop circle, and then you need the small piece. The small piece could be cut out of whatever you want. I think it's easier just to always cut them out of the same material. So if you're going to cut the big circle out of white, I went ahead and cut the little one out of white as well. Now I'm going to make a panel that goes on the back side that I can line up my front panel, and this helps me create my reveal wheel. So I've got some sticky note, Lawn Fawn sticky note cardstock here. That's a card base on the left, and then the rest was the leftover, and that's what I cut that back panel from. That is the same as the front panel, it just doesn't have the little window. Now I've got a brad here, and I'm going to put it through the small circle. And when it's a bigger brad like this, I just kind of like to turn my circle around and make sure that that opening turns around the brad really well. If you get those really tiny brads, it really doesn't matter, but this just kind of works that opening a little bit. And then the larger circle has some embossed lines that you can see there. You want those to face forward. So you're going to put the brad from the back to the front. And then I'm going to do the same on that. I'm just turning it, make sure it turns well, kind of work that opening a little bit. And then I'm going to open up my brad so it holds them together. And then to place this in the reveal wheel, you line up those embossed lines with the top of the opening and you kind of shift it up till you don't see them anymore. You do the same thing on the other side. You shift it out till you see them, and then you're going to want to push it back in to where they're just behind that opening. Now, I really should have put some adhesive on the back of this small circle first, but I didn't, so I'm going to hold this in place with a piece of Post-it note tape, just temporarily. So you put some foam adhesive squares on the small circle. 3 will do. You could add a little more if you wanted to. And I'm going to remove that Post-it note tape because I was just having it to hold the circle there temporarily so I didn't have to line it up again. Although, as you can see, I'm double checking and lining it up again. So now I can pull off the back from that adhesive. I'm not moving my circle. I'm holding it in place right where I lined it up. So I've got it where I want it with the background, and again I'm checking because that's the way I am. And then you can just kind of line up the front panel with the back panel, holding that circle right in place where you had it. So you can see now it's lined up where it should be, and it will spin freely. So the other thing you want to do before you kind of disassemble this is trace this little window so you know where to do your stamping. Because obviously this doesn't lay flat with the foam adhesive back there, so you can't stamp through the window. So I'm just lightly tracing it with a pencil, which is actually probably pretty hard to see. And then I'm going to turn it a quarter turn. So that window I traced is now on the right side of the circle, kind of where the little cutout is. So I can lay my front panel back on, trace that window very lightly again, and then turn it a quarter turn. So you do this 4 times so that you have a window outline on all 4 sides of the circle. And this is a guide on where to stamp. Now, you can see these on the screen. They're not perfect on the circle by any means. They look all wonky. They look kind of out of place. But you're never going to see that once you put the panel back on. As long as you've got it lined up to where you don't see the embossed lines, it will be fine. So now to do our stamping. So I'm going to be stamping these little solid sentiments like the little boy is texting, and I am stamping them in Forget-Me-Not ink. And there are 4 in this set that will actually fit in this opening perfectly. So this first one is I Love You, and I'm just lining it up with that pencil line that I had drawn, making sure it's straight. Now I'm going to turn my circle a quarter turn every time just so I'm stamping straight and not trying to like turn it or stamp it upside down to line it up with that window outline. The next one I'm going to stamp here says You Are the Best. Then I have one that says I Miss You. And the last one that fits in this opening says Thank You. There is another one actually, it says Congrats, but that really didn't work with kind of the card I was going with. So now I erase those pencil lines and I can just put the wheel back on the brad and it's right in place where it needs to be. So I'm just going to make sure all those pencil lines are erased, and you can see I can line it up here, and now when it turns, those little sentiments fit perfectly in that opening. So now I'm going to go ahead and put all my pieces on here and assemble the front panel, the front scene. So I'm going to glue my little boy down. Here's his little puppy dog beside him. And then of course I need to add the phone to his hand so he can be texting. And then before I adhere down these pieces in the front, I'm going to figure out where I want this tree because the trunk is not tall enough for where I want it. So I want to make sure I've got it placed kind of to where it's hidden behind the little girl. Then I'm taking that die that cut the opening, lining it up, kind of snapping in the opening that's there, and then cutting it out of the tree. You can feel when that die kind of falls into the opening that's there, which actually really helps with getting it where you want it on the tree. I'm also going to add the little food to the basket. And I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that's glued down so it's all kind of one piece when I put it on the front of the card. And then I'm going to add herself into her hands. Just takes a dab for that little foam. So I've got some thin foam squares here. These are kind of thinner than normal because this card already has some bulk to it, or it will when we get this panel on here with the foam adhesive. So I don't want what I'm putting on the front to stick out even more. So I'm using the thin to give it some dimension but not too much thickness. I'm going to add the same thin pieces of foam to the little girl on the front so that she's popped up at the same height, and make sure that she covers up the bottom of my tree. And then for the food and the cat, I'm going to add the foam that is normal thickness, so they're kind of in front of the little girl a little bit. So a lot of dimension going on here. Alright, now I've got my foam adhesive all around. You can see it's easy to put it on this back panel and make sure that it is out of the way of the circle. So I've pulled off all the little backer pieces on those, and then I can just line up those two die cut panels and everything lines up perfectly. I mean, how cute is that? So I have a couple more elements that I'm going to add here. I wanted it to look like they were texting back and forth. And so I am taking the little heart and I'm stamping that in raspberry ink, and I'm going to die cut it out, and I'm going to put it like she's texting that back to him. So I guess no matter what he says to her, she's just going to send back a little heart, but I think that's really cute. Like they're having a conversation across the park. So there is a little die that will cut this speech bubble out. I'm going to use that, and then I'm just going to adhere that down with a little foam adhesive as well. Now I wanted to finish it off. It was kind of off balance. We had a lot going on the right side, and it was kind of empty up on the top left. So I die cut a couple clouds. I'm just going to add those with some glue, and I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim off the excess so that they don't go past my little panel here. I'm also going to trim off the tree that overhangs the outside of the panel as well, so that we're kind of consistent with the look on the front of the card. I'm going to use some strong adhesive. This is Tombow Extreme adhesive, and I really like to use this when I'm putting these onto the card base because I want to make sure that all this work for this reveal wheel does not come off my card base. I want to make sure it's nice and stuck down. So I add a lot of adhesive. So now you can just line this up with your card base. This is a top folding card, and it'll make a nice yellow border around everything. I did finish it off with a couple other details. I added some shimmer to the clouds. And then after I was done, I actually forgot to stamp this, but I forget this almost every time for whatever reason. The little turn me with the arrow that is in the Reveal Wheel Sentiment set. I stamped that right next to the wheel so that you know to turn it right where my finger is. And I stamped it in some Carrot Lawn Fawn ink so that it was not too stark, not black, kind of blend in with that yellow. You can see it here. And here's another look. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.